What about crying? Well, crying happens. That's one of those natural things. It's the way that young babies communicate the things that they need. So they cry to tell us they need some comfort. They need something. They alert our attention to things. And it's totally natural and appropriate. We need to give our children comfort when they cry, when they're young. And to be intuitive and think of the things that they might have wrong or the things that they might need. But as they get older, they start to use the crying as a manipulation sometimes, instead of just a communication. So I want to give you an example of something that happened just the other day. My daughter, she had hurt herself, and she came to me crying because she was feeling a lot of pain and was feeling a little silly for how she had hurt herself, and she just wanted some comfort and for me to look at things and let her know that everything was okay. So of course I comforted her and told her everything that would be all right, and gave her a little hug and kept my arm around her until that's all she was done and that was all that she needed. And that's perfectly okay. That's a good kind of cry and something that's very natural and normal. I'm not the kind of person that thinks that people shouldn't have emotions. We are people with emotions, and those emotions are healthy for us to be able to get out at certain times. However, some people start to use crying, some small children especially, as a manipulation. So when they don't want to accept a no answer, for instance, they might all of a sudden be like, "Ah!" and start crying. And this type of a manipulation tries to get all the adults that are in the area or other people to think that they have somehow been hurt by another child, or that they need to be coddled or protected because they're feeling pain, because they couldn't have a toy that they wanted, or because they had to share with another person or something like that. Or maybe they didn't win a race and they decided to cry about it instead and won, and those kinds of things are all manipulative. And they're not proper communication. Also, they make the child be in bondage. They are then at the whim of every other person for their happiness, because they don't understand the skills that they need in order to be happy and be calm and communicate effectively. So, for crying children, if a child is doing a manipulative kind of a cry, then that to me is not accepting a no answer. So just like with whining, I will go up to the child and I will say, "You're crying. Right now, you need to be able to accept the no answer." And so I give them a little bit of a prep, and I tell them, remember, you can stay calm, look at the person, keep a calm voice and calm face, say okay, and ask to disagree appropriately or drop the subject. And then if they continue to keep crying, then that child is probably going to need to go to timeout and calm down, and then we'll talk about what they did wrong and what they should have done right and how they could have handled the situation differently. And we'll practice it too, because practicing for children is key. I just wanted to draw a line between those two different kinds of crying, because some people think like, well, what if they lost something that's really important to them and they start crying? Well, that's natural. It's going to happen. You know, if somebody dies or they lose something, that's natural. Maybe they lose a pet. It's natural they would cry. But if they choose to be depressed and whiny and cry for days, that person is probably using that incident or their emotions to manipulate in a certain way. And at that point, you need to stop them and say that you understand their feelings, but that the way that they're communicating is not right, that it's taking that feeling out of the home that needs to be present for your family to have your family vision that you're all working toward together. And maybe even say a prayer with them so that they can feel better, and then give them an instruction that they need to be able to be happy. And if not, then you know they're probably out of instructional control. And you might have to do the rule of 3. Generally, if crying is sincere, you wouldn't have to worry about any of those kinds of things. But if it goes to a manipulative level, you don't want your child to be in bondage with their emotions, because they can choose to be bound up by those emotional things and also choose to use them as a manipulation if they seem to get their way whenever they're emotional.